Welcome back to another episode of Rabbit Motorworks. Today we're going to cover the clutch and all the expensive things underneath that trunk as the motor gets dropped on the 911. And this is a past project that I had done recently when I had bought the vehicle. So stay tuned. I hope to educate folks on what it entails and all the things that go along with the job. So in 1987, Porsche moved to a G50 transmission that actually carried a rubber-splined clutch disc for distributing some of the impacts between gear changes. Great technology at the time. However, if you're familiar with these cars, a lot of them are sitting, may have been neglected, and they just don't get driven. And these are cars that really perform well if you drive them. So as soon as I got mine, it was basically getting it resuscitated so that it was really a driver's car, because that's something I do with my cars, is I like to drive them. And I was driving back from San Diego into LA, and I came around a turn coming out of downtown, and the clutch pedal literally fell to the floor and I lost the ability to shift. And then I smelled like a burning rubber smell. And that was actually the clutch disc letting go and expiring as it had seen better days, as we'll get into in the video here. But, you know, maintaining these cars really takes a lot of research, and it really is an expensive proposition that you've got to have the experience and the talent and the patience to be able to work on these cars. So my choice was to actually have the clutch done, and we'll get into some of that into the video with the tail. So doing the clutch on an air-cooled 911 is an engine-out proposition. It's a bit complex as there's been so many updates and revisions to the technology around the clutch, and we'll get into some of the details of that. I've done clutches in the past before on BMWs and other cars, and it's a pretty straightforward job. I was up for trying to tackle dropping the motor myself, but I decided to reach out for help and found a really good place when I was living in San Diego called Black Forest Automotive, and they've got a really great reputation of doing work on air-cooled 911s. And so the main thing as far as, you know, getting the engine out is disconnecting all the main components and then basically dropping it out and taking it from there. On mine specifically, the engine mount bar, or the two mounts and the bolts that hold the engine in, was actually the bolts were corroded into the mount, and so they did quite a lot of work trying to get the engine disconnected. So that was one thing that was definitely worth paying somebody else to do, is they had to replace that bar. You know, literally you're disconnecting, you know, every single, you know, piece of the motor that's connected to the car, which includes a disconnection panel inside the car of the shift linkage and all the fuel and electrical connections, including the starter related, and then the half shafts off each side of the transmission to the rear axles. So the great thing about my car, when I bought it, I got full documentation that came with the vehicle all the way back to the original purchase and European delivery of the car back in 1986. One of the things that was done around 1991 was a full clutch replacement, and the car had about 50,000 miles on it. And just for posterity, back then a clutch was about $1,300. So if you end up taking an engine out, you don't want to do this job more than once. And the recommendations from Black Forest, and they were really easy to work with, was replace what you can, and they had a lot of experience doing these on many Porsches. So you could already see from the engine when they pulled it out, there was a lot of oil. It was pretty coated. One of the things I opted for is, getting the engine cleaned after the whole job was complete, and we'll show that picture of that at the end as well too. But if you look at, some of these things and you see them for sale, you really want to make sure you consider that if you buy a car and the clutch hasn't been done, this is a good learning tool in this video to kind of understand what the job entails and everything that's considerate of what you need to do the job correctly. So hopefully this will help as we'll start to dig in further in some of the actual details of the parts replacement as we start to break down the engine from the transmission. So looking at the bell housing, pretty dark and black inside, plus a lot of oil on the outside of it, which was shedding from the top of the engine. And we'll show some of those areas that need to get replaced. The tell-all of things was really looking at that clutch disc and how that big chunk of rubber just separated completely off, so that explains the loss of clutch. The interesting thing is the clutch actually worked. It was just when you went to go shift gears, it was very, very violent and wasn't something you drive on regularly. But it wasn't like a full, complete failure in that band. And they, took the rear main seal off and then started to take apart the rest of the pressure plate, the ring gear, all the related components that were from years of use and wear. So if we look at the invoice from the job at Black Forest, the breakdown was pretty much in the clutch kit engine out, which hit about $2,800. Then the revisions to the release bearing in the shaft was about $300 some change, and then the triangle of death, as we'll cover that and get some detail, and I'll just talk to you a little bit more of that. And then the reference sensors, which was about $600 and some odd change, as the sheathing on those had pretty much worn away and was recommended to replace as well. Traditional spring clutch disc in replacement of the rubber-splined model was what we updated it with, in addition to a new pressure plate and revisions around quite a few other parts that came along with that. We had to, of course, machine the flywheel, clean all that up, and then there is an update to the throwout bearing and the release bearing with a newer guide sleeve, as it was a service bulletin that was causing other problems as well too. So that's an update. The other big thing, and this has gotten a lot of discussion over the years, is the clutch fork and the bushings within it as well too. And that's quite an extensive update, and this is another reason why you take it to a professional shop to do these kinds of things. So this actually required drilling out the case and installing a bronze set of guide bushings and a different guide pin, and there's all kinds of stuff. We have to have a special cutter to do the work here, and but this basically fixes and takes care of another service bulletin to do this work and make sure that it's not going to have any future problems, because you don't want to drop this motor again. So the triangle of death is kind of the intersection of a lot of things oil related. There's an oil pressure sender, and then there's also an oil thermostat, and the thermostat's got a O-ring on it, and then the pressure sensor gets replaced because it's got a seal in it that's known to go bad. In addition to that, there's oil breather hoses that get really solid and brittle, and so those get replaced in this service as well too. And then that really takes care of your oil leakage and woes that come out of that. The other thing that was noted in the service was the reference sensors. The shielding on those wires had come loose, and the reference sensors are basically tells where the engine is in its revolution of the crank, and so that's a real important timing aspect that you want to have intact, and so that was definitely something else that got replaced on the motor as well too. So all in all, the folks at Black Forest really did a nice job on this. They knew exactly what needed to be done. They were really communicative with me, explained every step of the way and the reasons why things needed to be replaced. So like I mentioned earlier, motor mount bracket was damaged trying to take it out. It was the bolts corroded in it. Plus there was an intake manifold rubber hose connector that was just a small little item that got replaced as well too. So the damage on this was $4,500, so a lot more expense than the original $1,300 back in the early 90s, but a lot more things were replaced on it as well too from today's revisions and technical bulletins to make sure the car is going to last and perform. And so I've been really pleased with it. And then following that, all the work, I took it to a steam clean engine place, and they did a really good job steam cleaning the motor after it was all put back in the car. Now the big trend is that, like a lot of people are seeing, is folks are going out to get the dry ice cleaning, blow off some of the old cosmoline and related. If you're a super purist and you want your car to look absolutely detailed and perfect, that's something to consider. There's a guy down in Orange County, and I might look into doing that as a future video, so stay tuned. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Please subscribe and put any comments below in the comments section if you've got any questions about the work that I had done on the Carrera. And again, thanks for watching.